Hello, welcome to Illinois Law with legal news you can use, sponsored by the Illinois State Bar Association. I'm Sam Kavathis and I'll be your host for tonight's show. Our topic tonight is personal injury matters from start to finish. I have three fine guests here to help us with tonight's discussion. My first guest is the Honorable Tom Lyons. He was appointed by the Illinois Supreme Court as a judge of the Circuit Court of Cook County in August of 2008. He currently is assigned to the 1st Municipal District. Previously, he worked in the private practice for a plaintiff's firm concentrated in aviation disaster. Prior to that, Judge Lyons worked for the Cook County State's Attorney. Judge, welcome to tonight's show.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
My second guest is Ron Kalish. Ron has been a trial lawyer since 1992. He is a partner at Steinberg, Goodman, and Kalish, where he practices in personal injury, medical malpractice, products liability. Ron has tried numerous cases in areas of medical negligence, nursing home neglect, motor vehicle crashes, and premises liability, and other civil matters. He has also argued cases before the Illinois Appellate Court and the Illinois Court of Claims. Ron has also lectured to other attorneys in the area of tort law for continuing legal education. And Ron has also volunteered his time teaching constitutional law to elementary students in the Chicago public school system through an outreach program called Lawyers in the Classroom, coordinated by the Constitutional Right Foundation. Ron, welcome to tonight's show.
Thank you, Sam.
And my final guest is Karen McNulty Enright, is the founding partner of Winters Enright Salzetta O'Brien LLC. Karen concentrates in complex medical malpractice and personal injury cases. She is a past president of the Women's Bar Association and an active member in the Illinois State Bar Association, as are our other guests tonight. Karen, welcome to tonight's show.
Thanks, Sam.
Let's start about personal injury matters. What's the first thing or things you would tell somebody who's involved in some kind of a personal injury, a slip and fall, an auto case, or something like that? What's the things they should or shouldn't do right away before they get to a lawyer?
I think the first time someone is involved in an accident, they need to assess how badly they've been injured. There are definitely certain claims, automobile claims or slip and fall cases, that clients can negotiate on their own. I've even had people who've had food poisoning at a local restaurant chain, and they've called, and I've talked them through ways that they can negotiate smaller claims on their own. When their medical injury gets complex, when they've had to go to a doctor more than once, they seem like they have some type of permanency, or there might be multiple parties involved, that's the point where I'd usually steer them towards a lawyer.
And when you got a matter where they're going to need a lawyer, are there some things that they can do, let's say in an auto accident case or premises case where they slip and fall, that they might be able to do on their own, assuming they're not that injured or they've gone to the treatment and they're able to walk or walk around afterwards?
Well, I think it's important, if you are in the unfortunate situation of being injured, that you document it as best you can, either if it means taking pictures of the objects or the events involved, if it means making sure that you have the names of witnesses who may have been around, if it means writing down in your own handwriting just a little journal of what's gone on before you get to that lawyer, so that when if you have that information, at least whether or not you're going to need a lawyer, at least you have those vital pieces of information.
And before they get to a lawyer, are there certain people that talk to, not to talk to? I mean, who do you need to talk to? Who shouldn't you talk to? You know, sometimes the client gets to you and they've given statements or things like that. What must they do, and who should they talk to?
When they're involved in an automobile accident, we almost always advise to make sure that there is an officer, some type of police officer on the scene that can verify what the position of the cars are, make sure that there's any witnesses that they can get statements from. After you've been involved in an accident, oftentimes you're shaken up and you don't really recall things, and it's best to wait before, you could talk to the police officer, but wait to talk to anyone from the insurance company. Oftentimes an insurance company will call you and they will record your statement, and you might not be prepared to give a statement at that time.
Can that statement be used at a later time?
Absolutely, and it's important to remember you are under no obligation to give or agree to give a recorded statement. If an insurance adjuster, and remember these are very skilled people who do this for a living, are out there calling you, my advice would be to politely take their name and number and tell them that you'll get back to them. There is absolutely no obligation that you have to agree to speak to them, or certainly to give a recorded statement. If they're going to be taking a recorded statement, they have to notify you of that, and you have to consent to it.
But your own company, your own insurance company calls you, what do you have to do with them?
Yeah, that's a little different. Then you must cooperate with your own insurance company in order to make sure that you have your own insurance coverage, and that will come about if it's a car crash case, getting your car fixed. Whether it's your fault or not, if you have collision insurance, the insurance company will fix your car. And likewise, if you have medical bills, even if this accident was your fault, most people have medical payment coverage under their own auto policy, and in order for that to kick in, everyone's policy says that you must, quote-unquote, cooperate. And so that does mean giving your version of what happened and going into a little bit of detail about how you've been injured.
And make sure you know what your policy says, because there might be a med pay provision in there that entitles you to $5,000 off the top for your medical expenses. Sometimes it might be more. When you're involved in an accident, you should get the medical, the insurance information from the person that you were involved in the accident with. You should not ever leave the scene of an accident without getting the name, the license number, the vehicle license number, and the insurance information from the person that you were involved in the accident with.
How about the idea of, there's a ticket involved in traffic cases all the time, and Judge, are these traffic tickets admissible? Who gets the ticket? What effect does that have on a civil case? If an officer writes somebody a ticket, does that mean that they're at fault in the case, in a civil case?
It doesn't necessarily have any effect. Very often the officers are relying on hearsay information that they get from people on the scene, or they may just show up at the scene and say, based upon the position of the cars, decide who may or may not be at fault. Very often people think if they have to show up in court, otherwise it'll have a negative impact on their civil case. That's not necessarily the case. If the person who's ticketed, for instance for a red light, pleads guilty to that red light and admits liability, that could have some effect. Okay. So if the case is dismissed, that's another situation.
And that doesn't mean they can't collect. Just because a traffic case is dismissed, does that mean your client can't collect in the civil matter, or is it entirely different?
Not at all. In fact, I get calls like that all the time. I went to court and the judge, for whatever reason, the ticket was dismissed, but I was sitting at a red light and this other person rear-ended me, for example. It has no adverse effect, a negative effect.
And on the converse side, if the other person who you think is at fault didn't get a ticket, again, the fact that doesn't get a ticket, is that admissible in a civil case?
No. It has no real bearing if the person was not. If you believe you were rear-ended and that person never received a ticket, it doesn't have any bearing, because there's going to be the civil case is going to have its own fact-finding. The discovery process will be entirely different, and the bottom line will be to get to the truth of what happened.
Before we get into, when you file a lawsuit, what happens with that, briefly, the clients get injured and they want to know, how am I going to pay for these bills? Who's paying for these bills? It was the other person's fault. How come they're not paying for it? What typically happens in these kind of cases, whether there's health insurance, car insurance, or no insurance? What happens?
Well, typically, you kind of guide them through the process, and your own medical insurance should be paying for your medical bills. A lot of times hospitals will say, well, was there someone else at fault? And they can try to go after, but the insurance company on the other side is not going to pay until the end of the case. They don't typically pay bills piecemeal. They'll give you one settlement at the end of the case. So you have to rely on your own insurance company, and then you are also obligated to refund your insurance company that amount of money that they paid on your behalf. Because in Illinois, we don't have anything such as a double recovery.
Yeah, Karen brings up a good point. I think it's important to remember, if you've been injured and you go to the hospital, make sure that you give that hospital your health insurance information, and more importantly, make sure when you're out of the hospital that in fact the hospital submitted your bill to the health insurance company, because ultimately it's your responsibility to pay that bill or to make sure it gets paid. And there's no guarantee that even though you've given the hospital your health insurance card that they've in fact mailed the bill in and submitted. So you should do it on your own.
Yeah, Karen mentioned something about when they pay the bill, you have to pay them back out of your settlement. Do you have to pay them back whatever they paid back in Illinois?
No, the way it works is if your health insurance paid some of your bills and you decide not to have a case, you don't owe your health insurance anything. However, if you do recover from somebody who was at fault, the law in Illinois says you can't recover money from that other party and also have the benefit of those bills paid. So, and this happens at the end of the case, and it's usually taken care of by the lawyers. We will negotiate with the health insurance company and agree to pay them a percentage of what they actually paid on your behalf. So don't think that you're out there hiring a lawyer working for the insurance company to get them their medical bills back. The amount of money that you pay back the health insurance company gets reduced by the amount that you're paying to have the lawyer handle your case.
What if you don't have health insurance? What happens then?
If you don't have health insurance, oftentimes we will talk to, we will let the hospital or provider know that there is an ongoing investigation or a claim, and they will file a lien against the case. Oftentimes we have clients that have public aid or they have Medicare, and public aid and Medicare pay those benefits, and under the law we're also obligated to pay back public aid and Medicare. If you don't have insurance, that doesn't mean that you cannot receive treatment. If you walk into a facility, they have an obligation to treat you.
And remember, most people have medical payment insurance under their own car on their own auto policy if it was a car crash. If you were hurt on a premises, many people have homeowners insurance or renters insurance, and so those are all avenues of insurance that you should think about and can help pay your bills if you don't have typical health insurance.
This is Illinois law, sponsored by the Illinois Bar Association, and we're talking about personal injury matters from start to finish with my guests, the Honorable Tom Lyons, Ron Kalish, and Karen McNulty Enright, and we'll be back in just a minute after these public service announcements.